Welcome to the Workforce Wire podcast, brought to you by Employ Prince George's, bridging the gap between job seekers and businesses. And now, here's your host, Walter Simmons.
Welcome to the Workforce Wire. I'm Walter Simmons, your host. Today we have today is November. It's a apprenticeship week, apprenticeship month. It's real big in the state of Maryland and across the country. And we have a special guest today, Miss Emma Brennan. She's the Women in Trades Technical Assistance Manager from the Community Service Agency of MWC AFL-CIO. She's going to explain all these letters to us. But today she's talking to us about apprenticeship, women in apprenticeship, and really changing the equality gap between women in the construction trades. Welcome to the Workforce Wire, Emma.
Thank you.
Well, so let's start from the beginning. I rattled off MWC, AFL-CIO. Tell us who you work for.
So we're the Metro Council of the local AFL-CIO. We represent about 150K union members, and this includes construction workers. And that's my focus, is working with women in construction.
Okay, and so what is the metro area? Where do you cover?
We cover Maryland, D.C., and certain parts of Virginia.
Okay, yeah. Great. So being a workforce development show, every single guest that comes on here has to talk about their workforce journey. So tell us, what you do today. What are you looking for tomorrow, and then how did you get here?
Sure. Well, today I work on getting more women interested in working in the construction trades, and I do that in a few different ways. So I work with apprenticeship programs to get them interested in different ways that can attract women to their programs. I also work with women to build community within construction work communities, because often you're the only woman. And then I also recruit for our pre-apprenticeship program. So where I came from, I'm from Oregon. I'm from Portland, Oregon, very far away from here.
Complete opposite side of the coast.
3,000 miles. So I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I grew up and I was sort of like a mediocre student. I wasn't like one that would be really on a traditional college path, but I was always very interested in working with my hands. And after struggling through college, I got a job as a construction project manager. And I had a boss who really saw that maybe construction project management wasn't my passion, but was really interested in working in the field. So he encouraged me to leave that job and go to a pre-apprenticeship program. So I went through Oregon Tradeswomen, and I became a carpenter. And I worked specifically as a cabinet maker. And while I was doing that, I really became interested in the politics around women in the trades. I was the only one. So a job opened up with Oregon Tradeswomen running their policy and working more in legislation. And that's what I moved to after working as a cabinet maker. And so it kind of married my two loves, like hands-on, working with women, and then also changing the face of construction. And when this position opened up here in D.C. to start a program, I had to take it. I had to go.
3,000 miles.
Get out of there.
So you were a cabinet maker.
That's right.
When people talk about workforce development and they're like, what do you want to do? Go make cabinets? You really did.
I did it. It was great.
And so I think that's good to hear. So for people that don't understand apprenticeship at its core, what is an apprenticeship? And then can you highlight what is a pre-apprenticeship?
Sure. So an apprenticeship program is one of the oldest forms of learning. It's the model that we use here is the earn while you learn model. So you apply to an apprenticeship program as if you're applying to maybe a job or a community college or a college. There's this very similar application process. Maybe you fill out an application, you take a math test, and you have an interview. And once you're accepted into that program, you start working. And you're working 40 hours a week. And along with that, you're also taking classes. And many apprenticeship programs have different models. So sometimes you take those classes in the evening. Sometimes you'll take a week off work and go to classes. But the idea is the more you learn, the more you get paid. So oftentimes it's based on hours. So hours in the workforce and then, working, and then hours in the classroom. And then after a certain amount of hours, usually about 6 months, you get a raise. And once you've completed your apprenticeship program, you've gotten enough raises so that you're at the top of your earning potential and you get journeyman wage.
So
and
that's
usually
when you become when you're a journeyman, you're an expert.
That's right. And so it's usually between 2 to 5 years, depending on the trade you choose.
So that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. And Workforce Wire listeners, our job seekers and our workforce development professionals, one of the key misnomers about apprenticeship is they think it's a training program. But people don't understand. Apprenticeship is employment.
That's right.
It's a job. You have to complete an application. You have to get hired. But it's also a mixture of a training program, earn and learn. And for those that know and work in the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act field, Earn and Learn is the largest and most greatest workforce development tool for immediate placements.
That's right.
So now you mentioned that you're working with pre-apprenticeships.
That's right.
So what's the difference between an apprenticeship and a pre-apprenticeship?
So oftentimes people have certain barriers to getting into an apprenticeship program. And there's a wide variety of barriers that people may have. Maybe you don't have enough experience. Maybe your math is not quite there. Maybe you're not sure and you want to try it out to see if this is the right thing for you. So pre-apprenticeship is a program usually between 3 to 6 weeks. Ours is 6. Where you get hands-on training in general construction work. And it makes you a more qualified candidate to apply to those sometimes very competitive apprenticeship programs.
And so that, what Emma's talking about is really the pre-training for the job.
Right.
In workforce development, we see it in a lot of times where there's a big skills gap or there's target populations of people that have barriers to employment. Mm-hmm. Could it be functioning level? It could be just knowledge of the industry or just general workforce experience. And that 3 to 6 weeks really helps people prepare and gives them, basically it levels the field.
That's right.
For them to, when they apply for this apprenticeship and apply for this job, to be at the same level or competitive with those who don't have those barriers to employment. So if you are a workforce professional, listen to this podcast from across the country, please look into pre-apprenticeships to prepare people for apprenticeships. And if you don't know about apprenticeships, visit the U.S. Department of Labor to learn about apprenticeships, and also visit your state labor office to learn about what unions or other private sector apprenticeships are available in your area. As Emma stated, the Community Service Agency of the Metro Washington Council AFL-CIO has their specific programs, which they called Building Futures. We partnered with them at Employ Prince George's under our sector program, the Construction Works program, to put people into the construction trades. And then I think last year they started talking about focusing on the WANTO grant. Now, the Women's in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations Grant. Apprenticeship has so many acronyms.
Yeah, they got a
lot. So if you want to learn more about what we're doing in Prince George's County, please visit www.employpg.org. Again, www.employpg.org. But let's talk about, again, the Women's and Apprenticeship Non-Traditional Occupations Grant that the Community Service Agency has received. So tell us what is the Building Futures program, and what is the WANTO grant doing to expand that program?
Yeah, so the Building Futures Pre-Apprenticeship Program is a free 6-week pre-apprenticeship program for people who are interested in the construction trades. And traditionally, we've only been in DC. That's the only place where we've really targeted our outreach. And so the WANTO grant, which is this Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupation grant, has really allowed us to expand our vision. So not just women in DC, but also women in Maryland. And so part of what you have to do with women in construction is women need to be specifically asked. Women need to be specifically invited to apply, and they need targeted outreach. And so what this WANTO grant allows for us to do is take that extra time and that extra space to invite women to come to our program and take that time to educate women about all the opportunities in the grant. And because of this grant, we've really increased the number of women in our program. I just did the calculations a few days ago, and since we've started this WANTO grant, our applications of women into our pre-apprenticeship program has gone up around 77%.
So do you think, I think this is a major key for definitely our business engagement and programmatic staff that are listening. Mm-hmm. You said something that you have to ask women to join the trade. So a lot of times we hear people say, well, how many women do you have in your program? And people are like, 1%, 2%. So is the next question that we should start asking is, have you had specific and customized outreach and marketing efforts to women?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, especially to employers that have been doing things in a certain way and they've worked for a long time, but maybe it's time to change up how you do your outreach and how you create those networks to get new employees.
So business consultants, part of what we do is engage businesses and help them grow. A lot of times people think it's from a workforce development field. It's only based on posting a job for them or hosting a customized job recruitment or job fair. Maybe one of your added services is helping businesses in the construction trades or these predominantly male-driven industries and creating a marketing and outreach strategy directed to a specific target population, be it a woman, be it a minority, be it a young adult. And you add that to your toolkit of helping businesses, because what we're seeing, what Emma's seeing, what we're seeing at Employ Prince George's is that sometimes to engage these target populations, they're not going to come through the traditional catcall. They're going to need some specific engagement. And as Emma's seeing, a huge increase once you started targeting women specifically for the construction trades. Okay, so exactly what does the Building Futures, the WANTO grant from the Community Services Agency, what does that specifically entail for that 6 weeks? Can you give us a highlight of when people, if our listeners right now are saying it's apprenticeship week, I want to go into the construction trades, what can they expect when they enter this program?
Yeah, so when you enter our program, there's sort of two different tracks in a way. There's the sort of traditional pre-apprenticeship program that we have been running for about 12 years now, which you'll get your OSHA 10, your CPR, your flagger, your scaffold, a lot of certifications along with learning blueprint reading, math, and some hands-on training. And you'll understand the apprenticeship system more. And that's kind of how we've done it for a long time. With the addition of our women-only program, we've been partnering with local apprenticeship programs to provide direct entry into those apprenticeship programs. So as a woman coming into our program, you will enter through a specific trade. For example, we've worked with the painters.
Shout them out. Finishing Trades Institute, Brian Cordy and my board member.
That's right. And we also worked with the local carpenters union. We just finished up a class with them. And we've also worked with the plumbers. And so what we did with those programs is we negotiated direct entry. So after you've completed with that apprenticeship program, you are allowed right into that program. And you can
direct entry.
That's right. And so through that specific program, you'll be learning trade-specific information for that specific apprenticeship program that you're going into.
And so when you say direct entry, explain that to our listeners.
So you bypass the traditional systems that you have to get into these apprenticeship programs. So for example, with the plumbers, they have to go in they have to walk in and apply, then they have to go take a math test. After they've ranked for their math test, they have to go for an interview. So getting into our pre-apprenticeship program means that you don't have to do any of that stuff. You get into our pre-apprenticeship program, we work with you about any specific barriers you might have, and then at the end of the program, you are enrolled into the plumbing apprenticeship program.
And so then it's just based on an employer picking you up.
Yeah, and it depends on the apprenticeship program, but the plumbers, they place you. So you'll be placed within a few weeks of your graduation.
Great. So another key for our workforce professional listeners, when you're working with a union or apprenticeship program and you're developing a pre-apprenticeship for maybe you're serving some of your target populations that have barriers to employment, one of the benefits that you want to be able to secure for your program is direct entry. That is, once you secure that, that's also a marketing tool you can use when you're trying to solicit people for your program, saying, hey, if you complete this program, you get direct entry into this union, into this apprenticeship. And a lot of times unions have they're more competitive wages, benefits, and they're a great opportunity for an unemployed job seeker really to look in to make a change in their financial situation. So just in general, though, you mentioned that we need to do in the industries more specific target marketing for women. But when I'm listening to you talk about direct entry, talking about the services, skills gap, what is it? Is it just marketing that's preventing women from interest in the trade, or is it something else? And being a carpenter yourself, right? Yeah. What do you? Because a lot of times, as a male, I don't see bias, I don't see discrimination, I don't see barriers. What, from your perspective, what is the gap? Why aren't women in this high-paying trade?
It's a really good question. We talk a lot about this thing called the FBI network, which is the fathers, brothers, in-laws.
Wow, FBI.
Yeah, that's
okay.
right. And
fathers,
so
brothers, and in-laws.
that's how a lot of people get into the trades. And so if you don't have that network already set up for you, like, why would you know that these things existed? It was never presented to me as an option, even though as a student, I was a really good candidate for this sort of path, but I wasn't directed that way. It took, many sort of sidesteps and weird detours to find my path eventually there. So there's that FBI network, having those people direct you and guide you. There's also just a lack of knowledge. Like, these things aren't taught in our schools. I had no idea that this was an option for me when I was
never heard about the trades.
No, definitely not. And it's just not a traditional path that students are put down. So, and especially not for women. So it would make sense that they weren't, they aren't being guided those ways. And also, sometimes dads don't often take their daughters to learn how to fix that car, tile that bathroom, sort of thing. And so they wouldn't have any of those hands-on skills to know that they were interested in those.
Wow. Okay. The FBI. Give it to us again.
Fathers, brothers, in-laws.
I'm going to use that. That's a new one I'm using.
You can take it.
But, it all depends. It's basically what you're saying is your network.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if your network isn't exposing you or you don't have a network into this industry, and it is kind of a closed-off industry when you're talking about unions, and especially with the wages and the benefits, right. They're highly competitive. So FBI, fathers, brothers, and in-laws. So I think for our workforce professionals out there, make sure in your career exploration, your career assessments, and really Emma hit it again. She didn't know about these types of opportunities in high schools. We have to do a better job of exposing our youth, our students, and our adult job seekers to all of the in-demand industries. Construction is an in-demand industry in the DC metropolitan area. So career exploration and exposure. Career exposure to youth and adults is very key to getting people into the trades. What do you think about, when a woman gets actually hired? I kind of, in my mind as you're talking about this, and I'm saying, so what, like when you said you were the only person, right? I feel like that's another barrier, is that you're the only woman on the work site. Culturally, how was that when you got into the industry, and how do you think that affects, because it's got to affect the long-term retention, because retention is an issue as well in the industry.
Well, for right now, women are about 3% of the construction industry. 3%. We're about 50% of the population, so it's like a little bit off, But in the DC area, there's actually 4%. So really,
so we're popping. We're
excelling.
There you go.
Yeah. But the places that have been really successful have had what I've talked about with that targeted outreach, thinking about not just doing the traditional outreach, making sure that your marketing shows women of color doing this work, and not just holding a clipboard looking blankly into the distance. Real women doing real work. And also thinking about partnering with organizations that serve women for their long-term success. But then also when women get into your program, thinking about how they can move through an apprenticeship program, get their journeyman license, and then also go beyond that. And leadership, how can they do that? And a lot of times that's done through mentoring. And mentoring can be really informal, but it also can be a formal program. And oftentimes women are not invited to be mentored.
Why not?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think that and fear giving special treatment to women, or they fear the optics of how that might look, and they don't want to be seen as creepy. And I think it comes as like from a good place, but it means that sometimes women are left out of these really traditional ways of how we excel in our jobs. So looking for ways as an employer or an apprenticeship program that you can formalize that makes it a lot easier for women in the long run to have those networks that are just given to other people.
So a lot of people don't necessarily talk about mentoring after employment. We talk about mentoring prior to employment. We talk about mentoring for youth and young adults. But one thing that and you're giving us a lot of good information here, is developing formulated and structured official mentoring programs for existing employees. I really think that's a great initiative and a great tip. And I know that you all have launched your mentoring program. And so let's talk more about the community service agency of the Metropolitan Washington Council. What are the unions that you all are working with right now? So what can somebody from DC, from Prince George's County, from Northern Virginia, if they're, what industries could they look at getting entry into from coming through one of your programs?
Yeah, if you come through our program, there's a wide variety of industries that people go into. One of our most popular is cement masonry. Then there's also the carpenter, sheet metal workers, electrician. One that not a lot of people know about that is very popular once people figure out what it is the heavy equipment operator. That is kind of an opaque title, but then when you get on a job site and you see the person operating a crane inside of an air-conditioned cab, they're very interested.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a difficult program to get into, but once you get in, you have a very clear, lifelong career path.
So cement masonry, heavy equipment operator, sheet metal, plumbers and gas fitters.
That's right.
I said painting.
Electrician,
and all of these are unions?
These are all unions, yeah.
So how can, this is great information. Where can people get more information about the Community Service Agency?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, which is www.communityserviceagency.org, and there's a tab there for Building Futures. And if you're a woman interested in the trades, we have a new section just specifically for women interested in the trades.
So www.communityserviceagency.org.
Correct.
Give it to them one more time.
www.communityserviceagency.org.
Great. And these are free training programs.
These are all free.
There you go. That's great information again.
Oh, we also provide a transportation stipend.
Oh.
So if you can't get necessarily to the training facility every day, it's about $30 a day. It comes in the form of a check at the end of every week.
So it's a free program. You enter into numerous different industries and union jobs across the DC metropolitan region, including Maryland, including Prince George's County.
That's right.
And you offer supportive services, a transportation stipend. Is there anything else that you're giving everything away for free. Is there anything else you're giving? You're like, you got a car
definitely.
or anything like that?
We also help with
it.
No, you don't get a car.
You
get a car. No, but we definitely help with things like driver's licenses and understanding how to navigate some of the systems inside of Maryland and DC. They can be really difficult to navigate. And so we have an experienced social worker who works with every student individually to get them everything they need to be fully prepared on the last day of class to apply to an apprenticeship program the next day. So that means getting a copy of that GED you haven't thought about in 10 years, getting your driver's license reinstated, maybe going through the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens in DC or working with the Maryland DMV to get on a payment plan for any of those fines and fees. These things that are sort of in like the back of your mind, we bring them to the forefront and we get them taken care of in 6 weeks.
Wow. Okay. So now let's step out of your normal realm a little bit. We're going to talk to these workforce professionals, and because you've done this coast to coast, how can somebody like me, an employed Prince George's and a Prince George's County Workforce Board Director or any local workforce board director, how can they partner with an agency or an entity like the Community Service Agency?
Yeah, if you're an employer, we're really excited to work with employers. We have a thing that we have every cohort that we call Employer Day. And that's where we have people who are looking for employees right now to come and interview our students who are prepared. We also look for ways to get onto job sites, for construction job sites, because it's really important that people know what they're getting into. So if you have a current construction site that might be amenable to 10 students coming and just peeking around, we would love that. And then I also look for ways to provide technical assistance. If you are an apprenticeship program or an employer who's looking to expand the gender diversity of your workforce, I will personally come in and work with you and look at different ways that you could change your company, whether that's really small ways like, hey, we have a tradeswoman image library. These images are free. You can download them and use them for marketing to get new employees. Or if they're bigger ones, like how can you implement a whole mentorship system? These sort of things are the things that I work with apprenticeship programs on in companies, and I'm happy to do with anyone. I really want to give a shout out to the Bricklayers apprenticeship program here in Maryland. They have done incredible work, and they're working really hard to change the face of their trade, which is
Local 1?
Ooh, they've been working hard. And
great. Scott Garvin.
That's right. Scott's awesome. And they accompanied me to a women's shelter in DC about maybe a few weeks ago, and they presented about what their program was and what they do. And women were really interested, but they just never learned about it before. So they're getting into the community and they're coming with me, so maybe they have a little bit of credibility with them, and that really changes how people get into their program.
And so you're out in the community. I know you come to our job center. Are you going everywhere? Can anybody contact you and say, hey, I'm interested? So everybody goes to that URL that
I can give my email. That's the best way to get in touch with me.
Give it to them.
It's ebrennan@dclabor.org. Anybody is welcome to email me, contact me about technical assistance or coming to speak to any groups of women. I always bring a tradeswoman with me if I'm going to speak to a group of women. So somebody who's really working in the field right now, not a carpenter from Oregon.
All right. So now let's go back and talk to some of our job seekers. What advice would you give women and other job seekers who want to get into an apprenticeship or the building trades?
I think the best piece of advice that someone gave me when I was first entering the trades, and it's really held true over the past several years, is to build community where you are. Because not only does that get you the next job, but it also supports you when things get hard. Because as a woman in the trades, you're definitely going to be the only one, and you're going to have a lot of maybe uncomfortable situations, not terrible things, but just things that are difficult to navigate, and you don't have a path laid out before you. But if you have a community of women and men who can support you through that, it really makes a difference in how you keep jobs and go to your next job.
So just creating a support system.
The support system is invaluable. There's nothing else like it.
Should they be scared of getting into the construction trades?
No, I think that if you're not afraid of being very tired at the end of the day, then it's the perfect thing for you. And also the great thing about construction is that it stays there. This is not a thing that you bring home with you. You never think about it when you're not there because there's nothing to do because it's a hands-on job. So at the end of the day, you're done.
So if you enjoy working with your hands, you're not afraid to work hard, and if you want to get some good benefits and wages,
great money,
you think the apprenticeship, the union route is the way to go.
That's the way.
Well, that's great. So let's talk about, I'm going off topic. I got one minute here. I've got to mention, we always market the construction trades for people that have criminal records. Is it the same for union jobs?
Almost universally, America wouldn't have been built without criminals is often the phrase that I hear, or felons. And that's really true. There's very few apprenticeship programs that don't accept people with criminal records. It's truly a handful, but as a rule, if you have a criminal background, it's not going to be an issue in the trades. There may be something specifically in DC. There may be stuff because we work with a lot of federal contracts. But where I'm from in Oregon, no one even asked that question.
See, that's great. So if you're a returning citizen, you have a criminal background, a criminal record, you can also get a union job. It's not just non-union construction jobs. You have the opportunity to get in one of these great union programs. Emma, thank you for joining our show again. Can you give your URL, your website, let our listeners know how to find you one more time?
Yes. So my name is Emma Brennan. The URL is www.communityserviceagency.org, and my email is ebrennan@dclabor.org.
And if you're interested in learning more about our programs in Prince George's County at Employ Prince George's, you can find us at www.employpg.org. And you can find us on all social media at EmployPG. And we have 5 different industry sector demographic specific programs and focused on construction, healthcare, IT, professional services, hospitality and accommodation, and we're definitely working with Emma on our Construction Works program. So get more information at www.employpg.org. Thank you for listening. This is the end of another great episode of the Workforce Wire. Thank you for being on our show, Emma. Listen to us again, and when you want to get information about workforce development, bridging the gap between job seekers and businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.